Peace, family. Today I want to talk about the metaphysics of sex, astral sex, sex magic, and the DNA of women. Usually, I kind of freestyle it, but today I'm going to kind of go on my focal points. So, first thing I want to talk about is sex being another dimension. If anybody's ever studied under the master teachers of metaphysics, such as Dr. Phil Valentine, Bobby Hemmett, Brother Panic, especially Bobby Hemmett. Bobby Hemmett is probably the ones who got a lot of us started in Magick and really dealing with our higher self. Bobby Hemmett would explain that, in one lecture he said, have you ever been having sex? It felt like you was having sex for about an hour, but then we looked at the clock, it was like 15 minutes. That is because you were in a different dimension. Because sex is a different dimension. Meaning that your sexual, now let's go into sexual alchemy. Basically you have like a Christ-like fluid or type of secretion that forms in the medulla. And when it doesn't get used or whatnot, it recycles itself. And it uses that energy to do other things. Well, it's kind of like semen retention. When you don't use it, it creates more energy to do other things, and it uses that energy to do other things, and puts that energy out into other areas when it would not. So basically, understanding that sperm is a form of light. So sperm is a form of light in its metaphysical and quantum properties, then light is a form of intellect. So therefore, when the man gives his light or his intellect to his significant other, he is giving away information. So the deeper science in the other dimension is that when you enter into the yoni or to the womb or to the vaginal canal, you are entering into another portal. So it is not only a physical dimension, but it is also a spiritual dimension. So, dealing with the metaphysics of sex, sex magic is very, very powerful in dealing with sex, because in sex magic, you can use all 5 of your senses when dealing with your significant other. And if you ejaculate at the same time using all the 5 senses, you can manifest money and all types of things and do all types of rituals. Sex magic is very powerful because, you're dealing with basically a very powerful spiritual type of energy, So, physically it stimulates the root and the sacral chakra, because, every chakra complements one and the other, because, it's kind of like complementary colors. Colors vibrate. That's why your chakras have certain colors to them, because you have to understand the certain vibrations and the frequencies that they put out. So it also spiritually connects you to the astral plane. So what does that mean? Whatever you can do in the physical plane, you can do in the astral plane. So the same way you can have coitus or sex in the physical plane, you can do the same thing in the astral plane and get the same feeling. That's kind of like having, how Bobby Hemmett would say, once you reach the point of having sex with the gods and the goddesses, you have reached the angelic realm. So, even Bobby Hemmett, as an ascended master, voodoo priest, initiated over 20 years, probably a high priest, he would teach all the time that, there were certain goddesses that were in love with him in the spiritual world. A lot of people didn't understand what he was saying, but I understood what he was saying. So, also you want to be aware of STDs. Not only do you have sexually transmitted disease in the physical plane, but you also have spiritually transmitted demons, one would say, or parasites in the spiritual plane. So you have to be aware with that, because once you let a man, basically sleep with you and whatnot, you're not knowing what type of spiritual, parasites that he is carrying with him. So them spiritual parasites end up coming over to you, and through the transference of DNA, which is spiritual and physical information, you can pick up the incubus and succubus spirits, not even knowing it. And then eventually what happens is it starts piercing through your aura, you know, which is kind of like your shield of protection. So, you know, and then at one point in time, it'd be too late before you realize it. Then now you got to do a whole bunch of spiritual work in order, like, in order to, like, cleanse away that ick and that spiritual, you know. So, speaking on those things, I also want to talk about DNA of women. A lot of women don't know that they are connected to their offsprings. That is why whenever your son, is like, you as a son is like locked up, or when something's finna go down, mama all of a sudden call you, be like, hey baby, you alright? And like you didn't even tell her that anything was going on, but she already knew because she has that connection to her offspring. Because remember, you shared that DNA. So that's why mama, it's kind of like that sixth sense. Whenever somebody want to know when it's their child or not, just go to your mom. Your mom be like, yep, it's yours. Even when you deny it, mama knows when it's yours. So, she's like that spiritual conduit. You know what I mean? Because, the creator or the all or the divine, uses her as a vessel. And all life comes through the feminine aspect. So women also have to understand that they retain the DNA of every man that they have ever slept with. Now, what does this mean? This gets back on the incubus and succubus spirits. A woman can suffer mental, spiritual, and physical rape, and would need like mental, spiritual, and physical healing in order to heal. What has happened through a course of sexual transference of DNA, because you have to understand there's physical DNA and there's spiritual DNA. So now how is this like something that's dangerous? Understand, if you don't know the background of the individual that you're sleeping with, you don't know if you're sleeping with a murderer, a rapist, a pedophile, or a woman beater. So what happens is the energy of this individual who carries these things ends up transferring that energy over to the recipient. You see what I'm saying? So then all of a sudden you as the female are wondering why you're always in a bad mood, or you have mood swings, or tempers, or tantrums, or all of a sudden you feel like you're in a spiritual attack, or now you start crying when now you go into depression, you go into anxiety because you're starting to carry on the effects of that physical transference of that DNA through sex, through sexual intercourse, through coitus, and you start becoming victim to those certain to those certain circumstances and situations. And the same thing transfers over to the spiritual realm when you get the spiritually transmitted parasites, should I say, because demons really come from the word daemon, which is a Greek word meaning nature spirits or intellectual spirits. So shout out to the demons. You know what I mean? So you can pick up the spiritual parasites, into which not only does it pierce through the physical armor, then it pierces also through the spiritual and the mental armor, because everything comes in threes. You get what I'm saying? The law of three. So not only do you receive it physically, mentally, and spiritually. So what happens is, in order to heal the physical, you have to heal the spiritual and the mental. In other words, you can't physically be well if you're not spiritually, mentally well. So that's why you got to have your shields. It's important to always have shields against energy vampires, psychic vampires, and psychic flack of all kinds. But other than that, that's kind of like my little mini intro into the metaphysics of sex, astral sex, sex magic, and DNA of women. Peace, family.